Imagine a life where your career is thriving, your relationships are strong, and your sense of purpose is clear, all without feeling burnt out. Too good to be true? Not according to Jim Rohn. Welcome to Yes You Can, the channel where we help you unlock a life of achievement and fulfillment. Today, we're diving into Jim Rohn's secret to work-life balance, build success without burnout. While modern culture urges us to work harder, hustle nonstop, and sacrifice everything for success, Rohn taught a different way, real balance. He believed your ambitions and your well-being should work together, not against each other. In this episode, we'll uncover how his timeless wisdom can help you set the right priorities, create healthy boundaries, and design a life that's both productive and deeply satisfying. Ready to stop running on empty and start living with intention? Let's get started. Let's take a moment to talk about Jim Rohn, not just the legend, not just the best-selling author, but the man who quietly changed the way we think about success itself. If you've ever dipped your toes into the world of personal development, you've probably come across his words. Maybe you've heard someone quote him in a seminar, or maybe you flipped through a book and his voice jumped right off the page. But what is it, really, that makes his perspective on success so different? Why do his ideas still feel fresh and even urgent in today's world, when, let's be honest, everything just seems to be speeding up? Let's start with an image. Picture a world where everyone is sprinting. Where do more, be more, achieve more is the mantra you see on every ad, every social media post, every motivational meme. That's the world most of us live in right now. It's not just ambition, it's a kind of feverish hustle that never gives you a chance to catch your breath. And here's the thing, in the midst of all this noise, Jim Rohn quietly stepped into the room and said something almost radical. He said, success is not just about more. It's about better. It's about balance. Now, those words might not sound radical at first. But think about it for a second. When was the last time someone told you it was okay to slow down? To step back and ask, what am I actually building here? What am I sacrificing along the way? In a world obsessed with productivity hacks and 5 a.m. routines, Jim Rohn's approach was almost old-fashioned, and yet, it's exactly what so many of us are craving today. Jim Rohn didn't buy into the idea that hustle was the only way forward. In fact, he often talked about the dangers of what he called busyness, not business, but busyness. That tendency we all have to fill our schedules, to say yes to everything, to wear exhaustion as a badge of honor. He saw how easy it was to burn out chasing things that, in the end, might not even matter to us. Instead, he asked a simple but powerful question: what is it all for? Let's dig into that a little. Jim Rohn's wisdom wasn't just about working smarter or finding shortcuts. It was about building a life that actually felt meaningful. He used to say, the major key to your better future is you. Not your boss. Not your calendar. Not your to-do list. You. The person who decides what gets your time, your energy, your heart. And here's the part that always gets me. Jim Rohn didn't say you should stop working hard. He worked hard. He achieved incredible things. He built companies, wrote books, spoke in front of thousands of people. But he also made space for family, for friendships, for sitting quietly in the evening and reflecting on the day. He believed that success without those things wasn't really success at all. There's a classic story he tells about the seasons. Maybe you've heard it before. He'd say, life is like the changing seasons. You cannot change the seasons, but you can change yourself. What he meant was, there will always be times when you're busy, and times when things slow down. Times when you push, and times when you rest. The wisdom comes in knowing which season you're in and respecting it. Not fighting against it, not wishing it away, but learning to move with the rhythm of your own life. That's such a different message from the one we usually get, isn't it? The world tells us to ignore our limits, to push past exhaustion, to keep grinding, no matter what. But Rohn looked at that culture and said, wait, aren't we missing the point? He challenged us to redefine what achievement really means. Let's talk about that for a second. What does achievement actually mean to you? Is it just about money, or status, or awards? For Jim Rohn, it never was. He believed that real achievement was about becoming the kind of person you're proud of. The kind of person who builds not just a career, but a life. A life with room for joy, for rest, for relationships that matter. He had this way of breaking things down so that you couldn't help but see the truth. He'd say, don't major in minor things. In other words, don't spend all your time sweating the small stuff, chasing things that don't actually bring you any closer to happiness. It sounds simple, but when you look at your own calendar, how much of it is filled with things that really matter? How much of it is just noise? Jim Rohn's approach was all about intentionality. He asked us to pause, to take a breath, and to choose, deliberately, where we invest our time and energy. If you listen to his seminars or read his writings, you'll notice something. He never separates success from well-being. To him, they're two sides of the same coin. You can have a thriving career and also have peace of mind, good health, strong relationships. In fact, he'd argue, if you don't have those things, you're missing something essential. I think that's why his philosophy feels so relevant right now. In the age of constant connection, when your phone never stops buzzing and the to-do list grows faster than you can check things off, it's easy to lose sight of what really matters. We chase the next goal, the next promotion, the next milestone, thinking that happiness is just around the corner if we can just work a little harder. But what if happiness is actually right here, waiting for us to slow down and notice it? Jim Rohn was never afraid to ask those uncomfortable questions. He wanted us to get honest about what we were sacrificing in the name of success. Are you missing out on your kids growing up? Are you letting friendships fade because you're too busy? Are you sacrificing your health for the sake of hitting one more deadline? He didn't judge, he just wanted us to really look at our lives, and to know that we had the power to make different choices. One of my favorite things he ever said is this: if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. It's a little bit cheeky, but it's true, isn't it? If you don't set your own priorities, the world will set them for you. And the world's priorities are almost always about more work, more achievement, more hustle. But what if we turned that around? What if we started with balance, with well-being, with happiness, and built our achievements around those things? That's what Jim Rohn was all about. He showed us that it's not only possible, but actually essential, to create a different kind of success, a success that feels good on the inside, not just impressive on the outside. Now, I know what you might be thinking, that sounds nice in theory, but is it really possible? Can you really build a thriving career and still have time for what matters most? Jim Rohn's life was living proof that you can. He wasn't superhuman. He didn't have 48 hours in a day. He just made different choices. He learned to say no to things that didn't align with his values. He made time for rest, for reflection, for connection. And over time, those choices compounded, just like investments in a bank account. Another thing he talked about, often, and with so much wisdom, was the power of small changes. He believed that you didn't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Instead, you could start with tiny shifts, a better morning routine, a few minutes of quiet in the evening, one less commitment on your calendar. Those little choices add up. Before you know it, You're not just more successful by the world's standards, but you actually feel better. You're healthier, happier, more connected. He compared it to tending a garden. You don't get a harvest by planting seeds one day and expecting fruit the next. You water, you weed, you care for the soil. It's the daily disciplines, the little acts of self-care, the small moments of connection, that create a beautiful life. That's balance. That's the kind of achievement that lasts. And maybe most importantly, Jim Rohn never lost sight of gratitude. He believed that appreciation was a key ingredient in any meaningful life. He'd say, learn to be thankful for what you already have, while you pursue all that you want. Isn't that a powerful way to live? Not stuck in the past, not endlessly chasing the future, but fully alive in the present moment. Grateful for the journey, not just the destination. In today's world, I think we need that wisdom more than ever. The pressure to hustle is everywhere. It's easy to look around and feel like you're falling behind, like you need to catch up, like you're never enough. But Jim Rohn's voice cuts through that noise, gently reminding us that we're already enough. That success isn't about proving something to the world, it's about creating a life that feels authentic, joyful, and free. He also believed in the power of reflection. He used to say, days are expensive. When you spend a day, you have one less day to spend. So make sure you spend each one wisely. That always makes me pause. How often do we run through our days on autopilot, checking boxes but never really feeling alive? Jim Rohn challenges us to wake up, to pay attention, to be deliberate with our time. Because at the end of the day, that's what our lives are made of, not years, but days. Not decades, but moments. Of course, none of this means you have to let go of ambition. Jim Rohn wasn't anti-goal or anti-success. He just wanted us to remember that our goals should add to our lives, not subtract from them. That our ambition should lift us up, not wear us down. When we lose sight of that, we end up chasing things that don't actually make us happy. We wake up one day and wonder how we got so far away from what we truly wanted. So, how do we bring some of Jim Rohn's wisdom into our own lives? First, by giving ourselves permission to step off the treadmill once in a while. To say no, even when it feels uncomfortable. To rest, even when the world says we should keep going. To put as much energy into our relationships, our health, and our happiness as we do into our work. Second, by remembering that real success is always personal. There's no one-size-fits-all formula. What matters to you might not matter to someone else, and that's okay. Jim Rohn encouraged us to define success on our own terms. To get really clear about what we value, what we're willing to work for, and what we're willing to let go of. Third, by embracing the idea that balance isn't static. It's not about achieving some perfect equation and then coasting forever. Life changes. Our priorities change. What matters is staying awake to those changes and making adjustments as we go. That takes honesty. That takes courage. But it's also what keeps us from burning out or losing ourselves in the chase. One of the things I love most about Jim Rohn's philosophy is that it gives us back our agency. It reminds us that we're not just passengers on this ride, we're the ones steering the ship. We get to choose how we spend our time, what we focus on, and who we become. That doesn't mean it's always easy. Sometimes it means disappointing people, or letting go of old habits, or facing parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. But it also means we get to create something real, something lasting, something that actually feels like ours. Jim Rohn's legacy isn't just in the books he wrote or the seminars he led, it's in the countless lives he helped transform. People who, thanks to his wisdom, dared to step off the hamster wheel and start living differently. People who realize that happiness isn't something you find at the end of the road, but something you can claim right now, in the midst of every ordinary day. And maybe, for you, his wisdom is the nudge you need to pause and ask, what does success really mean to me? Not what your parents want, not what your boss wants, not what social media says, but what you, deep down, know to be true. What would it look like to pursue that kind of success? What would you need to let go of? What would you need to make more space for? Jim Rohn didn't promise easy answers. He didn't say the journey would be simple or quick. But he did promise that it would be worth it. That if you took the time to slow down, to reflect, to choose your own path, you'd find something deeper than just accolades or achievements. You'd find meaning, purpose, a sense of peace that can't be shaken by outside circumstances. So, as we move forward, keep that image in your mind, the world racing ahead, everyone chasing more, and Jim Rohn, quietly smiling, reminding us that sometimes, the most radical thing you can do is to choose balance. To build a life that honors all of who you are, not just the parts the world rewards. His wisdom isn't just for the boardroom or the stage, it's for your kitchen table, your quiet mornings, your everyday choices. It's a reminder that success isn't just something you achieve. It's something you live, moment by moment, day by day. Maybe you're listening to this and realizing you've been running on empty. Maybe you're longing for a different pace, a deeper kind of fulfillment, a chance to reconnect with what matters most. If so, you're not alone. And you're not behind. You're right where you need to be. Jim Rohn would say, start from wherever you are, with whatever you've got. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to take the first step, a step toward balance, toward intentionality, toward a version of success that feels true for you. That's the wisdom of Jim Rohn. In a world obsessed with hustle, he quietly offered something so much richer, the invitation to build a life, not just a career. To measure your days not just by what you accomplish, but by how you feel, who you love, and what you contribute. And that, more than anything, is why his philosophy is more relevant now than ever. Because as the world gets louder, the need for reflection, for balance, for true success, success with a soul, only grows. Jim Rohn's voice is still here, still guiding us, still reminding us that yes, you can achieve great things. But you can also rest. You can also laugh. You can also live. So maybe the best way to honor his wisdom isn't just to work harder, but to pause, to breathe, and to ask yourself, what kind of life am I building? And am I making room, each day, for what matters most? That's where real success begins. And that's the journey we get to choose, starting right now. Let's talk about a belief that's everywhere these days, a belief so common, it's almost invisible. It's something we see in motivational posters, hear in meetings, and scroll through on social media. It's the idea that the only way to succeed is to do more. Work longer hours. Take on extra projects. Squeeze more out of every day, every hour, every second. More is better. You know the drill. Get up early, grind, hustle, stay late, answer emails at midnight. Repeat. And if you still haven't made it, well, then maybe you're just not trying hard enough. Sound familiar? It's the myth that more is better. And honestly, it can feel like it's everywhere. We're told that if we're not moving, we're falling behind. If we're not filling our schedules, someone else will. That if we just push a little harder, just add one more thing, success will finally come. But let's pause here, just for a second. Let's look at what this belief actually does to us. Because here's the truth. This mindset isn't always making us more successful. A lot of the time, it's just making us more exhausted, more distracted, more disconnected from the things that matter most. Think about your own life for a moment. Have you ever had a day where you were so busy, you didn't even remember half of what you did? Or a week where you crossed off every single thing on your to-do list, but somehow felt emptier than when you started? I know I have. There's this relentless pressure to always be doing, achieving, producing. But at some point, you start to wonder, where does it end? And what are we giving up along the way? Let's get honest. When we buy into the myth that more is always better, we often trade away things we can't get back. We trade away dinner with our family to take that extra call. We miss a quiet moment with a friend because we feel guilty for saying no. We fall into bed late, mind still buzzing, wondering where the day went, knowing tomorrow will look just the same. It's like being on a treadmill you can't get off. Every step feels like progress, but are we really moving forward? Or just running in place? Jim Rohn saw this, even decades ago. He noticed how we can get so caught up in doing more that we forget why we're doing it in the first place. He used to say, "Don't get so busy making a living that you forget to make a life." And that hits home, doesn't it? Because what is all this hard work for, if it doesn't add to the things that actually matter to us? Let's dig a little deeper. Where did this myth come from? Why do we believe that more is always better? Maybe it's because we live in a world that celebrates busyness. We wear packed calendars like badges of honor. We admire people who never stop. We admire people who answer emails before sunrise and take meetings during their kids' soccer game. Society applauds that kind of hustle. We're told it's the price of admission for success. But what's the real cost? Let's be honest, it's not just fatigue. It's not just needing an extra cup of coffee to push through. The real cost can be our relationships, our health, our peace of mind. It's missing birthdays, anniversaries, the small moments that make us human. It's feeling distant from our partners, friends, or children, even when we're sitting in the same room. It's being physically present, but mentally somewhere else. It's lying awake at night, wondering if maybe, just maybe, we're missing the point. And here's the thing. There's no finish line in this race. Because when you believe that more is always better, enough will always be just one step ahead. Get the promotion? Now work for the next one. Hit your sales target? Raise the bar. Finish the marathon? Sign up for another. It never ends. And the goalposts keep moving, just out of reach. Let's take a breath together. Imagine what it would feel like to step off that treadmill for a moment. To take a look around and ask yourself, am I actually building a life I love? Or am I just building a longer to-do list? Sometimes, we need to pause and check our direction before we speed up. Jim Rohn challenged people to do exactly that, He saw that success wasn't about stacking more and more on your plate. It was about choosing carefully what goes on your plate at all. He said, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines, practiced every day. Notice he didn't say 1,000 disciplines. He didn't say, do everything, all at once, all the time. He focused on a few things done well and with purpose. But if we're honest, that's not always easy. It takes courage to do less, not more. It takes self-awareness to say, you know what? I don't need to fill every minute of my day. It takes strength to define success for ourselves, instead of letting the world decide it for us. It means listening to that quiet inner voice that says, I want a meaningful life, not just a busy one. So, why do we keep buying into the myth of more is better? Maybe it's fear. Fear that if we slow down, we'll fall behind. Fear that we'll miss an opportunity. Fear that people will judge us, or think we're lazy, or not ambitious enough. But here's a little secret. Busyness isn't a badge of honor, it's often a mask for something deeper. It can be a way to avoid uncomfortable feelings. It can distract us from asking the big questions. Am I happy? Is this what I really want? Am I living my values, or just my obligations? I remember talking to a friend not long ago. She had just gotten a big promotion, something she'd worked toward for years. But when I asked her how she felt, she hesitated. She said, honestly, I'm exhausted. I barely see my kids. I don't even have time to enjoy what I've accomplished. I always thought that if I just worked a little harder, it would all be worth it. But now, I'm not so sure. And you know what? Her words stuck with me. Because I think so many of us have been there. We keep telling ourselves, it'll get better after this project is done. Next month, things will slow down. But somehow, they never do. The cycle keeps spinning, faster and faster. The myth of more is better tricks us into thinking that rest is lazy, or that saying no is selfish. But rest isn't a reward you get after the real work is done, it's an essential part of the process. It's how you refuel. It's how you connect, create, and find clarity. It's how you remember who you are, beyond your job title or your calendar. Jim Rohn loved to tell a story about the seasons. He said, just like farmers don't plant and harvest at the same time, we aren't meant to be in go mode every minute of every day. There are seasons for planting, for working hard. But there are also seasons for rest, reflection, and gathering the harvest. If you miss those seasons, you lose your balance, and eventually, your motivation. But in our world, it's easy to forget that. We keep pushing, fearing that if we stop, someone else will take our place. But what if the real risk isn't falling behind? What if the real risk is losing ourselves in the chase? Losing our health. Losing our joy. Losing our why. I want you to think for a moment about what success really looks like to you. Is it just about numbers, titles, or how many things you can juggle at once? Or is it about waking up with a sense of purpose and peace? Spending time with loved ones. Feeling proud of what you've created, not just at work, but in your life. The truth is, you get to decide. But you can't decide if you never stop long enough to ask. I know what you might be thinking. That sounds great, but in my world, there's just too much to do. And yes, there will always be demands on your time and energy. But here's the key: doing more doesn't always equal doing better. Productivity is not the same as purpose. Activity isn't the same as achievement. You could fill your days with endless tasks, but if none of them move you closer to what truly matters, what's the point? Jim Rohn was a master of focus. He knew that saying yes to everything meant saying no to the things that really counted. He taught people to be selective, to guard their time, to build a life on quality, not just quantity. But in a world that constantly pushes us to do more, it takes real strength to step back. To look at the big picture. To ask, am I chasing someone else's definition of success, or my own? And if the answer isn't clear, it might be time to pause. To listen in. To get honest about what you really want. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is to slow down. To set boundaries. To choose rest over rushing. To choose connection over constant achievement. It doesn't mean you won't work hard. It just means you're working hard for the right reasons. On the right things. At the right times. I want you to remember something. The people who love you, your family, your friends, they care about you, not just your accomplishments. They want your presence, not just your productivity. And deep down, you want that, too. You want to feel seen, valued, fulfilled, not just busy. So next time you catch yourself reaching for more, pause. Ask yourself, is this more of what I want? Or just more? And if you're not sure, that's okay. Start small. Notice where your time goes. Notice how you feel at the end of the day. Are you energized, or just depleted? Are you proud of what you did, or just relieved to be done? Those moments of reflection can be powerful. They're the first step to breaking free from the myth. You don't have to fill every hour to prove your worth. You don't have to say yes to every request, every meeting, every favor. You get to choose. And in choosing, you create space, not just in your schedule, but in your soul. Jim Rohn's wisdom reminds us that success and happiness aren't enemies. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. You can have both if you're willing to let go of the myth that more is better. You can build a life that's rich in meaning, not just in metrics. A life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. So, as we move forward, let's carry this thought with us. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what matters. It's not about being the busiest person in the room. It's about being the most present, the most engaged, the most alive. And that kind of success, that kind of fulfillment, it doesn't come from squeezing more into your days. It comes from making space for what counts. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to build a life that fits you, not just your resume. That's not laziness. That's wisdom. That's courage. And that, as Jim Rohn would say, is the foundation for a truly successful and truly satisfying life. So the next time you feel the urge to cram one more thing into your already full day, remember this: more isn't always better. Sometimes, enough is enough. And sometimes, less really is more. Let's choose wisely. Let's choose with heart. Let's choose to build a life that lasts, one intention, one choice, one moment at a time. So, if we step back and really look at it, chasing more is easy to do. We get swept up in the daily grind, the notifications, the never-ending lists. But Jim Rohn asked a different question, one that has the power to shift everything. Asterisk, what actually matters to you? Asterisk. It sounds simple, but when was the last time you really paused to answer that for yourself? Not what your boss expects. Not what Instagram says. Not even what your childhood self thought you should want. But you, right now, in this moment, what do you value most? Jim Rohn used to say, the major key to your better future is you. Not your boss. Not your parents. You. He believed that fulfillment didn't come from crossing off the most items on your to-do list. It came from knowing your true priorities and living by them. Let's be honest, most of us are really good at being busy. We know how to juggle schedules, answer emails at midnight, and feel guilty if we slow down. But have you ever noticed that even after a productive day, you can still feel strangely empty? That's because activity does not automatically equal progress. And it certainly doesn't guarantee happiness. Rohn saw this happening all the time. He noticed that people would fill their calendars, but rarely stopped to ask, does any of this actually matter to me? And he challenged us to get clear, asterisk, crystal clear, asterisk, on our own personal vision of success. Not the world's version. Ours. So, let's take a moment right now. If you could press pause on everything, just for a minute, what would rise to the top? What actually lights you up? Is it time with your family or friends? Is it pursuing a passion project you've put on hold? Maybe it's as simple as feeling calm and present in your own skin, instead of constantly rushed. You see, Rohn believed true achievement only happens when your actions match your values. He said, success is not to be pursued, it is to be attracted by the person you become. That means, before you add another thing to your list, ask yourself, is this leading me toward the life I truly want? Or is it just another box to check, another expectation to meet? Let's get practical for a second. I want you to imagine your calendar for the coming week. Look at every appointment, every task, every commitment. How many of them line up with what matters most to you? How many are there just because you felt like you should say yes, or because it's what you've always done? Rohn recommended making what he called the big list. But not the usual to-do list. Instead, he'd ask you to write down your core values. What are the things you're absolutely unwilling to compromise on? Honesty? Creativity? Adventure? Connection? Growth? Take a few minutes and just jot down what resonates for you. And don't worry about what anyone else would put on their list. This isn't about impressing anyone or living up to a standard. It's about coming home to yourself. Listening to that quiet voice inside that knows what you care about. Once you see those values on paper, the next step is to compare them to how you're actually spending your time. If you say family is your top priority, but your evenings are always taken over by work, that's a clue. If you say health matters, but can't remember the last time you got outside or made a healthy meal, that's another. This isn't about shame or guilt. It's about awareness. Rohn said, discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. But you can't build that bridge if your goals aren't really yours. So take an honest look. Where are you living in alignment, even in small ways? And where have your actions drifted away from what your heart truly wants? Here's the thing, it's not always easy. Sometimes, what matters to you puts you at odds with what's expected. Maybe your friends want to go out every weekend, but you're craving quiet time to recharge. Maybe your company pushes for overtime, but you value being present at home for dinner. These are real tensions. But clarity gives you the courage to make changes, starting small, if that's what you need. Rohn encouraged people to create what he called a personal philosophy. It's like your own inner compass. Whenever you're offered a new opportunity, or even just another task, you can hold it up to that compass and ask, does this move me closer to the life I want, or further away? If the answer is closer, that's a yes. If it's further away, that's a chance to pause. Maybe to say no. Or maybe to say not right now. You'll notice, as you get better at this, that life feels less frantic and more meaningful. You're no longer racing just to keep up. You're moving with purpose. You're making choices instead of defaulting to old habits. And it's not about being perfect. Rohn always admitted that he wasn't. He had seasons where he lost sight of his own values, too. He'd get caught up in the rush, or let other people's opinions steer his decisions. But he always returned, sometimes painfully, to that question. What matters most to me? If you keep coming back to that question, again and again, you start to build a life that feels like your own. Let's talk about the difference between goals and values, because a lot of us get these mixed up. Goals are the things you want to achieve: run a marathon, get promoted, buy a house. Values are the why underneath your goals. They're the reasons those things matter to you. Maybe you want to run a marathon because you value growth and challenge. Or get promoted because you value making an impact, or supporting your family. The trick is, if you only chase goals without connecting them to your values, you end up feeling empty even when you win. But if your goals are rooted in your core values, every step feels worthwhile, even the struggles and setbacks. Rohn would often encourage people to sit quietly, maybe just 10 minutes, and ask, if I keep living the way I am right now, will I end up where I want to be? It's a powerful question. And sometimes, the answer is uncomfortable. But that honesty is the first step to real change. So, if you're listening to this and feeling a little tug inside, maybe a sense that you've been chasing the wrong things, or just moving through life on autopilot, know that you're not alone. Almost everyone, at some point, wakes up to realize, wow, I've been so busy, but I'm not sure I'm moving in the right direction. That's the moment when you get to start again. That's the moment when you say, okay, What actually matters, asterisk to me asterisk. Try this little exercise from Rohn's workshops. Take a blank sheet of paper. Draw a line down the middle. On one side, write what I'm currently doing. On the other, write what I truly value. Then list, honestly, what fills your days and what you wish filled your days. Look for the gaps. Don't judge yourself. Just notice. Sometimes, those gaps are small and easy to close. Sometimes, they're wide and scary. But just seeing them is powerful. It gives you a roadmap for gentle changes. Maybe you swap 1 hour of scrolling social media for a phone call with someone you love. Maybe you set aside 20 minutes before bed to read, because you value learning. Or you block out a Saturday morning for a hobby that makes you feel alive. You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Rohn always said, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. That applies here, too. A few small choices, repeated, start to realign your actions with what really matters. And I want you to give yourself permission to grow. Your values might evolve over time. Maybe in your 20s, you valued adventure and travel. Now, stability and deep relationships feel more important. That's not failure, that's wisdom. When you check in with yourself regularly, you can navigate those shifts instead of ignoring them. Here's a story that always stuck with me. Rohn talked about a man who was wildly successful on paper, big house, fancy title, all the markers of achievement. But he felt miserable. After some reflection, he realized his real value was contribution, helping others, making a difference in his community. All the success in the world couldn't make up for the fact that he never made time for that. Once he started volunteering, even just a few hours a month, his whole outlook changed. He still worked hard, but now he was also feeding his soul. That's the power of aligning with your values. It doesn't require you to quit your job or run away to a cabin in the woods. It just asks you to make room for what matters, a little bit at a time. Rohn would say, either you run the day, or the day runs you. So many of us are letting our days run us. Our schedules get filled by default, not by design. But what if you started with your values, and then build your life around them? What if you made decisions, big and small, from that place? You might still have to do things you don't love, we all do. But even the tough stuff feels different when you know it's serving the life you actually want. Maybe right now, you're thinking, I don't even know what my values are anymore. That's okay. It can take time to rediscover them, especially if you've spent years focused on what others expect. Start small. What moments in your week feel most meaningful? When do you feel most alive, most like yourself? Those are clues. Follow them. Try thinking back to your happiest memories. What were you doing? Who were you with? What about those moments made you feel fulfilled? Chances are, the answer isn't I crushed my inbox or I sat in back-to-back meetings. It's more likely about connection, growth, adventure, service, creativity. Whatever it is for you, honor that. Write it down. Let it guide you. And if your life feels out of sync now, remember, awareness is the first step to change. As Rohn said, you cannot change your destination overnight, but you can change your direction overnight. Maybe today's the day you start to turn, even just a few degrees. Even just by asking, does what I'm doing today reflect what matters most to me? None of this is about perfection or about having all the answers. It's about being intentional, about checking in with yourself as often as you need to. It's about giving yourself grace when you drift and gently guiding yourself back. And it's about having the courage to make choices, sometimes hard ones, that honor your values, even when it's inconvenient or unpopular. Rohn believed that when you align your life with your core values, everything else gets easier. Decisions become clearer. Opportunities show up that you actually want to pursue. And even on hard days, you have a sense of purpose to anchor you. So, take a breath. Give yourself permission to slow down, to reflect, to ask what really matters. Start small. Pick one thing this week that reflects your values, and make space for it. See how it feels. Notice what changes, even if it's just in your mood, your energy, your sense of peace. That's how you begin the shift from living on autopilot to living on purpose. Jim Rohn's wisdom isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about choosing more wisely. It's about living a life that feels like yours, not just one that looks good from the outside. And it all begins with this: knowing what matters most, and letting that be your guide. Because at the end of the day, success without fulfillment isn't really success at all. And fulfillment comes from making your priorities, the things that truly matter, the foundation of your days. So, as we move forward, keep asking yourself, what lights me up? What do I want to make room for? What really matters to me? That's how you build a life that's not just full, but deeply meaningful. And you can start right now. One choice, one value, one day at a time. Let's talk about something that might feel uncomfortable at first: setting boundaries, and doing it without guilt. Now, if you're like me, you might already be feeling your shoulders tense up at the word boundaries. We don't always love that conversation, right? There's this little voice inside that whispers, what if I let someone down? What if I miss out? What if they think I'm not dedicated or grateful? But here's the thing, and it's something Jim Rohn understood deeply: drawing the line between work and life isn't selfish. In fact, it's one of the most generous things you can do. Generous to yourself, yes, but also to those around you. Because when you take care of your own energy and well-being, you show up more fully for your work, your loved ones, and your own dreams. Isn't that the point? Let's unpack what boundaries really are, and why we so often feel guilty about them. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out or keeping opportunities at arm's length. They're about making choices, deliberate, thoughtful choices, about how you spend your most precious resources, your time, your energy, your attention. Jim Rohn used to say, learn to say no. Don't let your mouth overload your back. How many times have you said yes to something, only to regret it later? Maybe it was a project at work you didn't have space for, or a social event you felt obligated to attend, even though you needed a quiet night in. Maybe it was saying just one more thing at your desk, when your kids were waiting at home. We've all been there. And often, the guilt doesn't come from the boundary itself, it comes from a story we tell ourselves. The story that we have to be everything to everyone. That our worth is tied to our productivity or our willingness to drop everything for someone else. But what if we rewrite that story? What if, like Rohn, we chose to believe that our value isn't measured by how many tasks we say yes to, but by how well we show up for the things that matter most? Let's look at some practical ways to start drawing those lines without feeling like you're letting the world down. First, give yourself permission. That might sound simple, but it's actually pretty radical. Because so many of us wait for someone else to say it's okay to put ourselves first. Let me say it now, you have the right to protect your time, your energy, and your peace. You don't need anyone's approval to do that. You have permission. Full stop. Next, get clear on what really matters to you. Boundaries aren't one size fits all. Your priorities will be different from mine. Maybe your non-negotiables are family dinners, or Sunday mornings off, or 30 quiet minutes with a book before bed. Sit with yourself for a minute and ask, where in my life do I feel stretched thin? Where do I feel resentful or exhausted? Those are clues. Jim Rohn talked about this idea often, the power of clarity. When you know what matters, it becomes much easier to protect it. So, write down your top 3 priorities for the week. Maybe it's quality time with your partner, a workout you never seem to fit in, or even just a real, uninterrupted lunch break. Once you've named those things, you can plan around them rather than letting everything else crowd them out. Now, the hard part, saying no. This is where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? Saying no can feel awkward, especially if you're used to being a yes person. But remember, every time you say yes to something that isn't important, you're saying no to something that is. So, what does saying no with confidence actually sound like? It doesn't have to be harsh or abrupt. In fact, it can be warm and gracious. You can say, "Thank you for thinking of me, right now I'm at capacity, but I appreciate the offer." Or, "I'd love to help, but I need to take care of a few commitments I've already made." You don't owe anyone a long explanation. Sometimes, "I can't this time, but please keep me in mind for the future," is all it takes. You might be surprised by how well people respond when you're honest and kind. And if they push back, that's okay too. Other people's disappointment isn't a reason to abandon your boundaries. Remember, you're teaching people how to treat you. You're modeling self-respect, not just for yourself, but for everyone around you. Another strategy Rohn often suggested, use systems to back up your boundaries. Let's say you're swamped at work, but emails keep coming in after hours. You can set an out-of-office reply that says, "Thanks for reaching out, I respond to messages between 9 and 5. Or you can mute notifications in the evening, so you're not tempted to check. If you work from home, maybe you close your laptop at a set time and physically leave the room. Small rituals like this send a message, not just to others, but to yourself, that your personal time is important. If you're a parent, maybe you set a family rule, no phones at the dinner table. If you're a leader, maybe you encourage your team to take their weekends off for real. Boundaries aren't just about individual choices, they can ripple out and create healthier cultures at work, at home, and in our communities. And let's not forget about rest. We live in a world that puts productivity on a pedestal, but rest is just as vital. Jim Rohn knew this. He used to say, "Sometimes you need to step away, so you can come back stronger." What kind of rest do you need more of? Is it sleep? Is it a walk in nature? Is it time with people who fill you up instead of draining you dry? And when you make space for rest, can you give yourself permission to actually enjoy it instead of making it another box to check off? Maybe it's as simple as closing your eyes for a few minutes during a busy day, or taking a lunch break away from your desk. Maybe it's choosing not to respond to messages the second they arrive. These small acts of rest are like deposits in your energy bank. And the interest they pay? That's the clarity, focus, and joy you bring back to everything else you do. Now, let's talk about relationships, the people you care about most. Boundaries aren't just for work life. They're vital in our personal lives, too. Sometimes, the hardest no is the one we need to say to friends, family, or even ourselves. Maybe your friend always asks for last-minute favors, and you say yes because you don't want to disappoint them. Or maybe a loved one expects you to drop your plans whenever they call. Or maybe you feel guilty taking time for yourself because you're used to putting others first. But here's the truth: setting boundaries doesn't mean you love people less. It means you love them enough to show up as your best self, not your exhausted self. When you communicate your needs clearly and kindly, you give others permission to do the same. You set the tone for healthier, more respectful connections. If you're struggling to set boundaries with loved ones, try starting with I statements. Instead of, you always. Try, I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I need some quiet time tonight. Or, I really want to be present with you, so let's schedule time when I can give you my full attention. It might feel awkward at first. That's normal. But with practice, it gets easier. And the payoff is worth it. And if you ever feel that wave of guilt rise up, remind yourself, boundaries are an act of kindness to others and to yourself. Let's pause here, because I want you to imagine something. What would your days look like if you protected your time, your energy, and your heart as fiercely as you protect your work deadlines? What would open up in your life if you had the courage to say no, so you could say a bigger yes to what really matters? Sometimes, boundaries are about what you say no to. Other times, they're about what you say yes to. Yes to family movie nights. Yes to an actual lunch break. Yes to 1 hour of doing absolutely nothing. Jim Rohn's wisdom was simple, but profound: don't major in minor things. When you set boundaries, you make sure the minor things don't take over. You make space for the moments, the people, and the dreams that light you up. Let's talk for a moment about how to handle those pressures that try to poke holes in your boundaries. Maybe it's a boss who expects late-night emails, or a friend who doesn't understand your new routine, or even your own inner critic, whispering that you're being lazy or selfish. First, recognize that pushback is normal. Change often makes people uncomfortable, especially if you've always been available, always said yes, always put others first. But stick with it. Because every time you hold the line, you're teaching yourself and everyone around you that your boundaries matter. You can soften the blow by explaining your why. You can say, I'm working on being more intentional with my time, so I can give my best to the things that matter. I hope you'll support me. Most people, when they understand your motive, will respect your decision. And if they don't, that's valuable information, too. It tells you who's willing to honor your needs, and who isn't. Another tip: boundaries are easier to keep when you make them visual. Try putting your breaks on your calendar, just like you would a meeting. Block off your evenings, your weekends, your family time. Treat those blocks as sacred, because they are. And when the urge comes to just check one more message or jump back online for a minute, Pause and ask, is this really urgent? Or can it wait until tomorrow? Sometimes, the boundary is as simple as shutting the laptop, turning off the phone, or stepping outside for 5 minutes of fresh air. Remember, there's no prize for being the most available, the most exhausted, or the most overwhelmed. You don't have to earn your rest. You don't have to justify your need for time off. You are allowed, right now, to choose yourself. And here's a little secret: when you do, you become even more valuable to everyone around you. You bring more energy, more creativity, more presence. You become the kind of person others want to be around, not because you're always saying yes, but because when you do say yes, you really mean it. Jim Rohn often said, either you run the day, or the day runs you. Boundaries are how you run your day. They're the quiet rules that shape your life, even when no one's watching. And if you slip up sometimes, if you say yes when you meant to say no, or let work creep into your weekend, give yourself grace. This is a practice, not a perfect. Every day is a new chance to realign, to choose again. Let's try a quick exercise together. Take a moment, right now, and think about one boundary you wish you could set in your life. Maybe it's turning off your work phone after 6 p.m. or carving out half an hour in the morning just for you, or asking for help with household chores instead of taking it all on yourself. Whatever it is, write it down, mentally or on paper. Now, ask yourself, what's the smallest step I can take toward that boundary this week? Maybe it's having one honest conversation. Maybe it's blocking off one evening. Maybe it's asking a friend to hold you accountable. Start small. Celebrate every step. And when the old guilt tries to sneak in, remember Rohn's words: if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. Your boundaries are your life plan. They're the blueprint for a life that feels good, not just looks good. And if you need one more nudge, remember, every yes you give, every minute you spend, is a piece of your life you never get back. Spend it wisely. Spend it on the things and the people that matter to you. Let's also talk about reflection, because boundaries are about more than just saying no, they're about making space for what fills you up. When was the last time you had a quiet moment to check in with yourself? To ask, how am I really doing? To notice what's working and what's not. Jim Rohn was a big believer in reflection. He journaled regularly, not just about his goals, but about how he felt, what he learned, what he wanted to change. Maybe for you, that looks like 5 minutes with a notebook at the end of the day, or a walk around the block, or just pausing before bed to breathe deeply and ask, did I live today on purpose, or just by default? These simple moments of reflection are where the magic happens. They help you notice when your boundaries are slipping, or when you need to tighten them up. They help you course correct before overwhelm takes over. So, make space for reflection, not as another task to check off, but as a gift to yourself. And if you ever feel resistance, or hear that old more is better voice creeping in, remember, you're not alone. We live in a culture that rewards overwork and busyness. But you get to choose a different path. You get to define success for yourself. Boundaries are how you do that, one choice at a time. Let me share a story, maybe it'll sound familiar. A client of mine once told me she felt like she was drowning in responsibilities. She worked long hours, volunteered at her kids' school, managed her home, and tried to be there for everyone. She wore her exhaustion like a badge of honor, until one day, she realized she was missing out on the moments that mattered most. So, she started small. She blocked off Friday nights as family time, no work, no errands, no exceptions. At first, it felt impossible. But as the weeks went by, those Friday nights became sacred. Her kids noticed. Her partner noticed. And most of all, she noticed she felt lighter, happier, more connected. That's the power of boundaries. They don't have to be big or dramatic. Sometimes, the tiniest shift can change everything. I want you to know, you are worthy of boundaries. You are worthy of rest, of joy, of space to breathe. Not someday, not when you've checked everything off your list, but now. Jim Rohn didn't build his legacy by working 24/7. He built it by choosing wisely, by protecting his energy, and by making time for reflection, relationships, and rest. You can do the same. If you need a reminder, write it on a sticky note. My time is valuable. Say it to yourself in the mirror. Whisper it when you're tempted to say yes out of guilt or fear. Because every time you honor your boundaries, you're building a life you actually want to live. So, as we close out this section, I want to leave you with a gentle challenge. This week, pick one area where you can set a clearer boundary. Maybe it's at work, maybe at home, maybe with yourself. Start with one small commitment. Protect it fiercely. And notice how it feels, not just in your schedule, but in your heart. You might feel uncomfortable at first. That's normal. Change always feels awkward in the beginning. But with each step, you're living more intentionally. With each boundary, you're making space for rest, for connection, for reflection. And as Jim Rohn would say, you're moving closer, not just to success, but to a life well lived. You deserve that. You really do. Let's take a deep breath together and make a promise to honor our boundaries, not just for our own sake, but for all the people and dreams that matter most. Because when you set healthy boundaries, you show up stronger, happier, and more whole. And that is the very best gift you can give to yourself and to the world. So, what does it actually look like to live with intention, instead of just running on fumes? Let's dig into how Jim Rohn put this into practice, because it wasn't just talk for him. This was a man who believed that every day is a chance to design your life, not just survive it. He used to say, either you run the day, or the day runs you. That hits home, doesn't it? How many mornings do we wake up already behind, the to-do list echoing in our heads before our feet even hit the floor? It's so easy to fall into that trap, where the minutes slip through your fingers and you end up wondering where the day went. Rohn's approach was all about reclaiming that power. He had a method, a simple, repeatable process, to help you move from feeling overwhelmed to feeling purposeful. Let's walk through it together. First, he started with clarity. And not just a vague sense of I want to be successful or I want to get things done. He asked, what does success actually mean to you? Not your neighbor, not your boss, not your Instagram feed. You. So, take a moment, even right now, ask yourself, if you could design a good day, what would it look like? Who would you spend time with? What work would you do? How would you want to feel by the end of it? This is where intention starts, with those small but powerful questions. Jim used to recommend writing it down. Not just thinking about it in the swirl of your mind, but getting it onto paper. He called it the magic of writing things down. It makes your desires real, it gives them weight. So, maybe tonight, or tomorrow morning, grab a notebook and jot down your answer to, what would a fulfilling day look like for me? No right or wrong answers here. Just you, being honest with yourself. That's step one. The next piece is planning. Now, I know, not everyone loves to plan. But Rohn wasn't talking about mapping out every second, color-coding your life and squeezing out spontaneity. He believed in a framework, a little structure that frees you up, rather than boxes you in. He used to say, don't start your day until you've finished it on paper. In other words, before the whirlwind starts, take a few minutes to decide what's actually important for today. Not everything you could do, but what matters most. Pick 3 things. Just 3. Maybe it's finishing a key project at work, calling a friend you've lost touch with, and taking a walk outside. Or maybe it's simply carving out time for a quiet cup of coffee by yourself. When we try to do everything, we end up doing nothing well. But if we know what our true priorities are, even a busy day can feel meaningful. So, look at your day ahead. What are your 3 things? What would make today feel intentional, not accidental? That's what Rohn means by designing your day. Now, here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about scheduling your workload, it's about blending your ambitions and your well-being. Jim Rohn was a master of balance. He saw success not as a sprint, but as a marathon, one that includes rest stops. He encouraged people to put life on their calendars, not just work. Think about that for a second. How often do you actually schedule time for yourself? Family dinners, exercise, a creative hobby, or just 10 minutes of quiet, do they make it onto your calendar, or do they get squeezed out by urgent tasks? Rohn believed that if it matters, it deserves a place in your schedule. So, what's one thing outside of work that truly fuels you? Is it reading, playing music, being in nature, or just having a laugh with your kids? Whatever it is, commit to putting it on your calendar as seriously as you would a business meeting. You'll be amazed how these small, intentional moments can recharge you. And here's the truth, when you're recharged and grounded, you show up better for everything else. You make better decisions. You're more creative. You're just happier. Let's talk about energy management, too. Jim used to ask, are you managing your time, or is your time managing you? But more than that, are you managing your energy? It's so tempting to keep pushing, to answer one more email, to squeeze in one more call. But Rohn reminded us that productivity isn't just about how many hours you put in, it's about the quality you bring to those hours. Think about your day as having peaks and valleys. When are you most alert, most creative? When do you start to fade? Instead of forcing yourself through the rough patches, what if you moved your most important tasks to those high-energy moments? Rohn would say, give yourself the gift of your best hours. And when your energy dips, allow yourself a real break. Step outside, stretch, do something that brings you back to yourself, even if it's just for 5 minutes. You're not losing time, you're gaining clarity. That's intention in action. Another key idea from Jim: reflection. He believed that growth doesn't happen by accident. It comes from pausing, looking back, and asking what's working, what's not. So, at the end of your day, take a few minutes to check in with yourself. How did today go? What felt meaningful? What drained you? What filled you up? Again, write it down if you can. This isn't about judgment or guilt, it's just about learning. You're building awareness, so you can make tomorrow even better. Little by little, that's how you shift from exhaustion to intention. And here's what's so powerful: you don't have to overhaul your life overnight. Jim Rohn always told people, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines, practiced every day. It's those small, consistent actions that add up, making your days more intentional and your life more fulfilling. Maybe it starts with waking up 10 minutes earlier, just to have a quiet moment before the world rushes in. Or finally turning off your work notifications at dinner, so you can be truly present. Or setting a recurring reminder to pause and breathe, even if only for a minute. These changes might seem tiny, almost insignificant. But over weeks and months, they create a ripple effect. You begin to feel more in control, more energized, more like yourself. Let's be honest, living with intention in today's world isn't always easy. The pressure to do more, achieve more, and always be on is everywhere. But Jim Rohn's wisdom is a reminder that you have a choice. You can build your days around what actually matters to you, not just what other people expect. You don't have to say yes to everything. You don't have to fill every hour to the brim. You can choose where your time and energy go. And the more you do that, the stronger your sense of purpose becomes. It's like building a muscle. At first, saying no to things that don't align with your values feels awkward. Maybe a little scary. But over time, it gets easier. You get better at identifying what lifts you up and what weighs you down. You start to notice the difference between busy and meaningful. And that is the sweet spot Jim Rohn always pointed to. So, if you're listening right now, maybe ask yourself, where am I running on autopilot? Where am I spending energy out of habit, not intention? What's one small thing I could change, starting today, to move toward a more intentional life? Remember, it doesn't have to be dramatic. Maybe it's a 5-minute pause in the morning, a quick walk at lunch, or finally picking up the phone for that call you've been putting off. Maybe it's just being fully present with your family for dinner, letting work wait until tomorrow. Start there. Give yourself permission to make small changes. Rohn believed deeply in the power of daily habits. He said, "Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment." But discipline doesn't have to mean rigidity or self-punishment. It can mean protecting what matters to you, your health, your relationships, your sense of purpose, by giving them space in your day. Think about your day as a canvas, and you're the artist. You get to decide which colors, which brushstrokes, make it beautiful. Not every day will be perfect. There will be setbacks, unexpected chaos, and days when nothing goes according to plan. That's human. But if you keep coming back to your core values, to what matters most, you'll find your way back to intention, again and again. Jim Rohn often said, the major key to your better future is you. It's not your boss, your circumstances, or the latest productivity app. It's you taking small, mindful steps to design your days on purpose. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment or for everything to calm down. You can start today, right where you are. And if you slip up, if you fall back into old habits, don't beat yourself up. Just notice it. Forgive yourself and gently realign. Every day is a new chance. Every morning, you get to decide, will I let life happen to me, or will I shape it, even in small ways? This is how you build a life of fulfillment, not exhaustion. By making space for what matters, by honoring your true priorities, and by giving yourself permission to rest and recharge along the way. Jim Rohn's wisdom isn't about perfection, it's about progress. It's about making intention a habit, one day at a time. And as you do, you'll find that your career doesn't have to come at the cost of your well-being. You can build both, side by side. You can have success and satisfaction. You can work toward big goals and enjoy the journey. You can be present for your loved ones and proud of your achievements. It all starts with those simple, daily choices. So, tonight, before you close your eyes, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do tomorrow to live with more intention? Write it down. Commit to it. And when tomorrow comes, give yourself a moment of gratitude for choosing purpose over autopilot. It's a journey, with ups and downs, twists and turns. But with Jim Rohn's wisdom as your guide, you can create a life that feels true to you. A life that energizes you, not drains you. One small, intentional choice at a time. So maybe you're listening right now thinking, that all sounds great, but is true balance actually possible for me? Maybe a part of you doubts it, or you wonder if it's just a nice idea that works for someone else, someone with fewer responsibilities, or a less demanding job, or a different kind of life. I want you to know, you are not alone in feeling that way. And I truly believe, the answer is yes. Balance is possible. Not perfect balance, not a life with no chaos or stress, but a life where you get to decide what matters most. A life where you can be proud of your achievements and feel at peace with yourself at the end of the day. Jim Rohn said something simple, but powerful. Success is not to be pursued, it is to be attracted by the person you become. It's not just about the goals you reach, but the way you live as you work toward them. You get to define what success means for you, not just what you produce, but how you feel, who you become, and the relationships you nurture along the way. Maybe today, that definition is shifting a little bit. Maybe for the first time in a while, you're considering what it might feel like to have both ambition and contentment. To strive for more, but also to savor what you already have. That's not a contradiction, it's actually the secret that so many high achievers wish they'd learned sooner. So, as we wrap up today, I want to encourage you to take a breath. Just a deep, real breath. Notice what it feels like to pause, just for a moment, and check in with yourself. No pressure, no judgment, only curiosity. Ask yourself, what season am I in right now? Where have I been pouring my energy lately? Is there an area of my life that's been neglected, not because I don't care, but because I've been running so hard? Is there a relationship I want to give more time to? Is there a part of myself, my health, my joy, my creativity, that I've set aside for someday, but deep down, I miss it? It's okay if your answers surprise you. It's okay if you don't have the answers yet. What matters is that you're starting to ask. That's the first step toward living with intention instead of exhaustion. Because if there's one thing Jim Rohn taught us, it's this. You can shape your life, one small decision at a time. You don't have to overhaul everything all at once. Tiny shifts add up, changing a morning habit, protecting time with family, choosing to say no when needed, or even just ending the workday on time one evening a week. Maybe your first step is just letting yourself rest for 20 minutes, or calling a friend, or putting away your phone at dinner. Maybe it's journaling tonight about what matters most to you. Or maybe it's simply saying to yourself, I deserve a life I actually enjoy living. That's not selfish, that's wise stewardship of your one and only life. Remember, balance will look different for everyone. For some people, it means carving out time to be present with your kids. For others, it's making space for creativity, connection, or even solitude. For you, maybe it's a mix of all these things, and that's perfectly okay. You don't need to apologize for wanting more harmony. You don't need to feel guilty for protecting your peace. You are allowed to build a life that's not just busy, but meaningful, to have both achievement and joy. If you ever feel resistance, or guilt, or fear about setting boundaries or slowing down, remember, you are not alone on this path. We're all figuring it out, step by step. There are days when it feels easy, and days when it feels hard. Give yourself permission to be human through it all. Today, your journey doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to live up to social media highlight reels, or anyone's expectations but your own. You get to decide what balance means for you, in this moment, in this season of your life. So as you move forward, I hope you'll carry some of Jim Rohn's wisdom in your back pocket. Maybe his words will echo in your mind when you're tempted to say yes to everything. Maybe you'll remember that you can be ambitious without sacrificing your soul. That you can care about your work and your well-being, your goals and your relationships. And if you stumble, if you have days when you feel overwhelmed or off track, that's absolutely normal. Success is not about never falling, it's about getting back up, learning from the experience, and adjusting the way you move forward. You are capable of creating a life that feels right to you, regardless of what anyone else is doing. I want to say thank you, truly, for spending this time with me today. Thank you for pausing the hustle long enough to reflect on what matters. Thank you for being open to a new kind of success story, one that includes peace, presence, and fulfillment, not just achievement. You could be anywhere right now and you chose to be here, listening, growing, and investing in yourself. If something in this episode spoke to you, I'd love to hear about it. What's one insight or tiny shift you're most excited to try? What does balance look like for you? Where do you find yourself struggling, and where do you feel hopeful? Please, share your thoughts, your experiences, or even your questions. I read every message and I truly mean it when I say, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. You can leave a comment or reach out on social media. I'd love to connect, and so would the rest of the Yes You Can community. We grow stronger, and wiser, and more compassionate when we share our journeys with each other. If you found this helpful, or if you know someone who's feeling burned out or overwhelmed, please share this episode with them. Sometimes, all it takes is hearing a different perspective to spark real change. And if you'd like more tools, strategies, or just a dose of encouragement to help you live and work with intention, not exhaustion, make sure you're subscribed to the Yes You Can podcast, or join us online for more inspiring content. Imagine where you could be in a month, a year, 5 years, if you started making one small intentional choice each day. Not out of pressure, but out of respect for yourself and your dreams. Imagine looking back and realizing you built a life that actually fits you, not just a life that looks impressive to everyone else. That's what's possible, starting right where you are. You don't have to wait for perfect circumstances or permission. You don't have to get it right every single day. You just have to begin with one honest conversation, one boundary, one new habit, one moment of rest. It can start now. As Jim Rohn said, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. Let's start designing together. I hope you'll keep tuning in, keep growing, and keep giving yourself grace on this journey. Because balance isn't a finish line, it's a way of living, one day at a time. And you are more than capable of living it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing yourself, even for just this moment. Go out and design a life that's both successful and deeply joyful. I believe in you, and I can't wait to see what you do next. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and remember, yes, you can.